Renaissance man, world changer. Here at the Global Lane, we'd like to share some reflections of Pat Robertson. Insights you may have not heard in the immediate aftermath of his passing last week. Pat helped people in need worldwide and brought millions to Christ during his 62 years at the helm of the CBN ministry. Shortly after his passing, I talked to two men whose lives and careers were transformed because of Pat Robertson. First, here's Sam Brownback. He has served as Kansas Senator, Governor, and Religious Freedom Ambassador. Ambassador Brownback, please share your thoughts about the impact of Pat Robertson and his advancing the cause of religious freedom worldwide.
Unmatched, unparalleled. He really opened up a number of places, and he was, again, a pioneer there with all of the broadcasting that he in various iterations and groups has been associated with taking the good news around the world. I remember being there in Virginia Beach and meeting with Pat and leaving the meeting with him and driving by one of the studios, and here's all these big satellite dishes there pointed at different ways and beaming the word of God around the world. That was Pat Robertson.
And what did Pat mean to you?
Well, he was a pioneer. He was somebody that believed God for big things. I was elected to the U.S. Senate in 1996 out of Kansas, but I probably wouldn't have been elected if Pat Robertson hadn't run for president in 1988 and gotten people of faith active in the political process, engaged. And by 1996, they were organized and were able to elect me into the seat that Bob Dole had been in. He founded and was a part of so many big things. He believed God for big things. And you can see that in all the legacy of things that he's associated with, and God rest his soul.
Pat Robertson ran for president in 1988. What is the lesson for us when it comes to Christian participation in politics and government?
I think he really teaches the church today to believe God for big things, and to engage, always in love, always caringly, but to engage. Eric Metaxas has got a recent book out on Letter to the American Church, and it's critical of the American church not being engaged. I think we can really look to a person like Pat Robertson and see there is a way to engage, and you engage with your faith, you engage lovingly, but you've got to engage, and you've got to engage the culture, and you've got to engage the country. And we should do that, and he's got a legacy of doing that.
Ambassador Sam Brownback, thank you and God bless.
My honor to be a part of it.
In 1990, Pat Robertson founded the American Center for Law and Justice. It's a Christian legal organization that defends U.S. constitutional rights and religious freedom worldwide. Jay Sekulow is the chief counsel of the ACLJ. Jay, what did Pat Robertson mean for you and the ACLJ?
Well, he's our founder, and he's a mentor, and he was a friend, and he was a great encourager. He had tremendous insight the legal situation. Of course, he was trained as a lawyer, and I'll never forget our first meeting in Chesapeake, Virginia at the Holiday Inn, back in 1990, I think. It may have been even 89, and he laid out the vision for the American Center for Law and Justice, and the idea was his, obviously inspired by the Lord, to put together resources that would enable a legal organization like ours to flourish here in the United States and around the world. And he was always a source of great encouragement and wisdom. And even up to 8 weeks ago, I was with him and we were talking about various issues and talking about decisions that we were going to make for the ACLJ. He was fully engaged and, as always, fully supportive of the vision where the lawyers wanted to see the organization go. So I can't say enough. This is a guy that was our mentor, our friend, and our colleague.
And Pat was an educated lawyer and always a Supreme Court watcher. What did he say to you when the court, in effect, struck down Roe versus Wade last summer? Did you discuss it?
We did, and I reminded him, and he was thrilled to remember that the first case that Justice Alito cited in the opinion was a case that he was at the argument for that I made at the Supreme Court of the United States in 1992 and 93. It was argued twice, and Pat was at the case. And, it was, I think, the recognition of that achievement of the overturning of Roe, and that it's a case based on a case that the ACLJ litigated at the Supreme Court, I think was a tremendous source of pride for him and pride in the right way, that the vision that he had for this organization from the beginning has continued. And I just can't say enough about you mentioned his courtroom knowledge and his knowledge of the courts. He was fully aware of what the justices' thoughts were on cases and legal philosophy. He read the opinions. So it was, I can't begin to thank him enough. I'll never be able to repay him for everything he's done for the ACLJ and for all of us. And he'll be sadly missed, but we rejoice that he's in heaven.
And Pat was committed to religious freedom worldwide. You partnered with him on that. Tell us about it.
I remember exactly where I was standing in 1997 in Strasbourg, France, where I went to look at office space for an organization we wanted to form, that Pat and I had talked about forming, called the European Center for Law and Justice, to do exactly that, fight for religious freedom around the globe. He viewed religious freedom as a God-given, inalienable right, not based just on a constitution or a Declaration of Universal Rights, but as a God-given right. And that is what the motivating factor was, then ended up forming the European Center for Law and Justice, which of course handles cases literally throughout Europe.
And Jay, how about you personally? How did he change you?
I said this earlier, and this is the thing that just struck me with Pat always. He was always a source of great encouragement, even when the slings and arrows were coming, and they did come. And this guy, I remember him saying, hey, you can't worry about that. He used to call it newspaper rap. Newspaper is going to be, it's print for a day and then it's gone. And of course, the world changed with the internet, but his view never changed. And that is, he used to use a quote from Winston Churchill and a couple of others saying, you stood up for something. And this was a Winston Churchill quote, and you got attacked for it. Good. It means you stood up for something. And he just was a tremendous source of encouragement. And along the way, we had a couple of bumps. I mean, we had some cases that didn't go the way you want to go. I mean, those things happen. And he was just a tremendous. So for me personally, I learned from him the art of the possible. And I think that's what will stick with me through all of this. And don't limit what God is seeking to do, and don't put it in a box. And I remember that statement in the dressing room at CBN. Gary, you've seen it too, of course. And it's, think of something so big that it can only happen with God. And that's his life, that's his legacy, and I think that's what he imparted to all of us.
Okay, Jay Sekulow, thank you for sharing your reflections of Pat Robertson.
Thanks, Gary.
And later in the program, I'll share some personal memories of my 39 years with Pat Robertson, my boss, mentor, and friend.